Why do countries trade with each other? The basic answer is that by doing so, both countries benefit in some way. Of course, in most cases, international trade actually takes place between either two companies located in different countries or between a company and a final consumer, again, located in different countries. So, why do countries, firms, and individuals benefit from trading with economic agents located in a different country? Well, assuming a perfect world, competitive markets, and no market failures, the main reason is that the relative price or the opportunity cost of a particular good traded is different across the two countries. This difference in relative price means that we are able to obtain a particular good by giving up fewer of our scarce resources by buying it from abroad. And of course, the same is true for consumers living in other countries. Once we realize that it is a difference in relative price or opportunity cost that provides the reason for why international trade is beneficial to all trading partners, the next question is, of course, why is the relative price different? Well, again, in a perfect world, the relative price of any good or service is determined by demand and supply. It is thus a cross-country difference in either demand or supply, or both, that leads to a difference in relative price. And understanding this prompts us to ask, where does demand and supply functions come from? That is, how are they actually determined, and what are the factors that would cause them to look different across countries? Let's start with the demand curve. The demand curve is the result of many consumers making choices in order to maximize their utility, their happiness, given their budget constraint. That is, it is the combination of preferences, income, and prices that lead to a certain amount of a good or service to be demanded in the domestic market. If we change the price of a particular good or service while holding everything else constant, we can trace out the domestic demand curve. So that's where the demand curve comes from. So here we have it. If preferences or income or prices differ across consumers living in different countries, then we would expect the demand for the good to be different. Let's next think about the supply curve. The supply curve is derived from the amount of a good or service being produced in a country. So just like the demand curve is the result of many consumers making utility maximizing choices, the supply curve is the result of many firms making profit maximizing choices. For a competitive representative firm, this means that the firm will decide to produce an amount for which the selling price is equal to the marginal cost of producing the good. That is, the combined marginal cost curves of all the firms in the market will trace out the supply curve. So what determines a firm's marginal cost? The answer to that question is that the firm's access to technology in the form of a production function and the prices of its inputs will determine the cost of producing one more unit of output. That is, the marginal cost of producing one unit of output. Well, there we have it again. If firms located in different countries have access to different levels of technology and or the cost of resources is different, then we would expect that the supply of the good will also be different across countries. At this point, we see that as long as countries differ in terms of consumer preferences, levels of technology, access to and cost of resources, and maybe other things, then we expect their demand and supply curves to be different, and hence equilibrium relative prices will be different. And with different relative prices, firms and consumers across the world will look for locations and producers that are able to produce and sell their products and services cheaper. And they will decide to purchase the good or service from those producers, no matter where they are located. In fact, we would expect that as long as transaction costs, such as shipping costs, foreign exchange costs, or other financial costs, are sufficiently low, then economic agents will always buy the good and service from a low-cost producer, no matter where they are located. And this should hold true as long as there are no government-imposed barriers to international trade, such as tariffs or quotas. Actually, mentioning the government reminds us of another possible reason for relative price differences across countries, namely domestically imposed taxes and subsidies. That is, even in the very unlikely case that preferences, technology, and input costs are exactly the same across countries, if governments decide to impose different levels of taxes on either domestic consumers or producers, or extend subsidies to domestic producers, then relative prices will be different, and there will be, again, a reason to trade. So, to conclude, consumers make choices optimally based on their preferences and their budget constraint. Producers make choices optimally based on their level of technology and availability of resources. And these combined choices give us different demand and supply curves across countries and consequently different relative prices. And these relative price differences provide the proximate reason for international trade and the benefits from such trade. There we have it.